Hey guys, welcome back to Team 6K. This is Undead, and while we've been showing how to play decks, that still leaves the question, how do we beat those decks? This is going to be the first episode of the new 6K series, Beating the Best. Right now, Speedroids is one of the best decks in the game. Part of that is because it can easily establish powerful boards while being able to play through interruptions. Cards in the deck that get their plays going all inherently will lose to an interruption. The thing is though that they will likely have more pieces to allow them to keep going, but just using your interruption at a time that you think it might be good might end up backfiring because they might be able to keep going and they might be able to invalidate your efforts. This would feel horrible. You spent a long time grinding for staples or paying for them just for them not to work, but that's exactly what a video like this is here for. When you want to know how to beat any deck, the first thing you have to do is look for the deck's weaknesses so you can find out how to exploit them. The weaknesses can be found when you look at the strengths deeply enough. Speedroids is a powerful synchro deck capable of putting up a monster negate, a targeting monster negate, and a higher level monster negate, and they also have a synchro that can destroy the whole field. I'll go over the weaknesses this analysis provides us. Firstly, this deck is a synchro deck, so if you have any way to prevent synchro summons or punish the opponent for synchro summoning, however that might be in your particular deck type, then that is what you should be aiming to use. Secondly, this deck puts up monster negates and targeting monster negates, so their boss monsters can't really deal with Backrow. Clearwing only negates a monster that targets, not a Backrow that targets, so you can use Backrow to turn off their negates to allow your monsters to go through, or you could use their Backrow to straight up remove their boss monsters. Thirdly, their synchro that destroys the whole field is something that they go into using materials that they would ordinarily be using to summon Crystal Wing. So if you put up enough cards on the field that the opponent needs to deal with them, you can bait them into summoning it, and then you can deal with its destruction effect and you'll be able to use all of your effects without them being negated. These weaknesses sound a lot easier to exploit than they really are, and with good decks that usually is the case. If you clicked on this video hoping that I would tell you that you will never have a difficult game against Speedroids again, then that isn't what this video is. However, this video will hopefully equip you with some insight about how to use what you have to its fullest potential. When you see a deck's weakness, the deck is often playing cards to help mitigate that weakness, but if you are good enough at prodding at the right weaknesses, then you may be golden. Your deck might prod at one particular weakness, and that will probably be enough for you to win, but another deck might prod at another weakness, and that might be enough for them to win. Every deck is going to do things differently. You may have seen Weatherman and I dueling against Speedroids, and you may have seen us beating them before they get their plays going or after they get their plays going, and I'm going to talk about both for each weakness. You may find when you are listening, you can see which weaknesses your deck may be able to take advantage of best. So the first weakness of this deck is that it is a synchro deck. This is mainly a weakness that is relevant if you go first against it. However, it isn't completely irrelevant if you go second against it. The main way people counter synchro decks is by preventing the synchro summon from happening in the first place. This could be by flipping the synchro materials face down. This could be by removing key synchro materials from the field. It could be by preventing materials from being used as material in the first place. It could even be by negating the synchro summon itself. The cards on the screen all represent the forms of preventing a synchro summon that are common in Duel Links, but if you've played against a lot of Speedroid players, you might know that they can actually play through or around cards like these. Because of this, we have to be a lot more conservative with how we use them. If we use them as soon as they are usable, the opponent will take advantage of it, but if we use them at the best moment, then it will be more impactful to the duel overall. A good first example is Steel Swarm Roach. This guy can basically negate 2 synchro summons, and ever since he came to the game, he has been able to just attach a material as soon as a synchro is summoned to negate that summon, as if that summon never happened in the first place. Since it can negate twice in the same turn, no synchro deck could play through that until Speedroids. Speedroids can still keep playing after 2 of their synchro summons were negated, so that actually makes Steel Swarm Roach a lot less powerful. However, Roach can be used as a deterrent rather than a hard counter. If you summon Roach turn 1 and the opponent feels that they can play through it, so they begin making their plays, then let their first synchro summon resolve. I know it sounds weird, but if you let the first synchro summon resolve, then they won't be able to play through Roach, because every other synchro summon will be negated. They will be able to defeat Roach in battle, but that is pretty much their only option, meaning that they will have much less for you to deal with, and less to deal with is a lot better than more to deal with. You gotta cut your losses rather than trying to completely undo them, because often it won't work. Another way to deal with synchro summoning is by flipping their materials down. The thing about this is that against Speedroids, there is no one correct monster to flip down in all situations. This is going to need to be a decision you make every single time you play against Speedroid. Here are some tips to help you with that decision. The first rule is if by flipping their monster they won't be able to synchro summon, then that is a great time to flip that monster down. For example, if they have 3 monsters in their main monster zones and one of them is a tuner, by flipping the tuner down they most likely won't have a way to synchro summon because their field will be clogged with non-tuners. It is the same same the other way around if they have their field clogged with 2 tuners and a non-tuner. By flipping down the non-tuner, they can't use 2 tuners for a synchro summon. The second rule is that if you think they will be able to summon something else after you flip their monster down, should you flip their monster down, and if so, which one should you flip down? Most Speedroid players rely on the skill to send Dae from deck to grave, and that can be banished from grave in order to summon a tuner from hand or grave. So if you flip down their tuner, there's a good chance that they can summon another one. Because of this, it is most likely best to flip down the non-tuner if you feel you have to. And of course, if they have the materials on the field to summon Clearwing, it is best practice to flip down their non-tuner to force them into an awkward situation. If they can play through it, that's great for them, but at least you have made things weird for them, which may be better for you on your follow-up turn, and it may make it easier for the rest of your interruptions to stop them. If you're using Evil Swarm Nightmare to flip their monsters down, it is still best to hold on to the effect activations, just like Steel Swarm Roach. Don't just click yes whenever it asks you, follow the same rules that you would follow when using Book, Canadia, or Floodgate. Just act as if you have 2 of them. That way it will make their ability to follow up even more difficult. The most powerful thing you can do in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is to say no to activating your interruption. It makes the opponent more stressed because they know they aren't baiting you out. If your deck's best way of preventing synchro summons is by removing materials from the field, be careful about how you do it. Like I outlined before, if you remove their tuner, then Daikoduke can probably summon it back. So if you have the choice, then remove their non-tuner or non-tuners, but only do so once they have the right materials on the field to go into a synchro that you would be afraid of them going into. For example, if they have the materials to go into Clearwing Synchro Dragon, then by letting them summon it, they will be able to go right into a level 8 synchro without you being able to respond to it. So if they can make a level 7 synchro, it is probably a good time to remove the non-tuner. There will be scenarios where removing the tuner is better, but all situations are going to be different, and you are going to need to think about it in the moment. What are you willing to allow them to do for the cause of the long game, and what are you not willing to allow them to do? Always have that in the back of your mind when you're dueling anybody. Warning Point is a fantastic card against Speedroids if you go first against them, and this one card can often make them end their turn. When they summon a monster, it won't only negate their effects, but it'll prevent them from being used as material. If you use this on Speedroid Terratop, it's a big deal for them. They can't get a search, they can't use it as material, and they probably discarded something to get it in the first place. If you used it on Speedroid Double Yo-Yo, then it won't resummon something, and if they summon another tuner, they still can't use it as material for anything. The downside of this card though is that it won't help you against an established field, so it's mainly good at preventing the field from happening in the first place. If the method your deck uses to counter synchro decks is preventing them from going into synchros in the first place, then you might be in a tight spot when your opponent goes first. If that's the case, if your deck has any hand traps, they can be pretty good at least making your opponent have a weaker field than they normally would have. DD Crow can banish Daikoduke from grave before they get to use it, Skullmeister can negate Daikoduke when it activates, Lancia can prevent it from activating it in the first place, and Ursarctic hand traps can pretty much do what DD Crow or Book of Moon do. It is important to know how the deck works too, so be sure to study the deck, be inside the mind of the opponent, think what you would do if you were in their situation, and try to stop them from doing what you think is best for them. Sometimes you're going to need to let them synchro summon so that you can stop them further on in their combo. The second weakness of this deck is the fact that its negates are against monsters, with the Crystal Wing negate, monsters that target high level monsters with the Clear Wing negate, and high level monster effects with the other Clear Wing negate. This leaves you some options. You can still activate spells and traps without them being negated, and if you have a way to turn off one of the opponent's boss monsters but not the other, then you might be able to play through the other easily. For example, if your deck doesn't have to rely on monster effects that target monsters, then you don't have to care about Clearwing's target negate. If your deck doesn't rely on high level monsters activated effects, then you don't have to worry about Clearwing's monster effect negate. In those cases, you would turn off the Crystal Wing. But if your deck does rely on either of those things, then you would turn off the Clear Wing and then try to play through the single Crystal Wing negate. Most decks worth their salt these days can play through one interruption. They might not be able to achieve their optimal field, but they may still be able to reach the right footing to keep themselves in the game. A good way to play through whatever negate you need to play through is by using high impact effects. They're just so juicy that the opponent just has to negate them, or by using removal or negation effects that they simply have no choice but to negate. Decks that have a lot of playthrough potential can take advantage of these tips, and if you want to know how to turn off negates, the best options in the game that do something like that are Book of Moon and Forbidden Chalice. You should probably play them in a deck that has playthrough potential like this, but you might not be playing a deck that has great playthrough potential, and in those cases you'll be taking advantage of this weakness by using more powerful impact cards like trap cards, for example Needle Sealing, Crackdown, or compulsory evacuation device. When would you use these if you are going second? Well, you set them. And since they don't tend to play Cosmic but instead play Lance, they won't be able to remove them before their next turn. Then, when you use them on their turn, they may be able to protect their monster from one of them, but in response you may be able to chain another of your cards in order to truly break their board. Speedroids follow-up plays are not incredibly powerful. It is mainly their opening play that is powerful. So use one Backrow to bait Lance, and if they don't have Lance, then great, you have broken their field. And if they do have Lance, then use another Backrow and you will have properly screwed them over. If possible, use these Backrow during the battle phase to give them the least chance of following up. But if you need to use them earlier, for example, if they are going into Kitedrake, then you can use them at that point. Book of Moon can act as a good bait in this situation, and some people like to use cards like Dark Hole and Mind Control. However, these cards are only good going second, and these traps are good both going first and going second, because they can be used to interrupt the opponent before they get their play started, and they can be used to break their board after they've gotten their plays going. If your deck's going first play doesn't really use Backrow, and you are going against Speedroids, then your goal should be to put up multiple monster-based interruptions. That way, you can prevent their plays in a variety of ways, and if they manage to put up a Crystal Wing still, then their one negate won't be as good as your 2 or more interruptions. In fact, they might consider going into high Speedroid Kitedrake to remove all of your interruptions. That being able to wipe the field is going to be more threatening to you than a single monster negate, so you should focus instead on preventing the Kitedrake from coming out rather than the Crystal Wing. If you are playing a Backrow deck, the same will be true, that you should worry more about Kitedrake than Crystal Wing. Do all you can to prevent a level 8 from coming out. A nice way to do this is by using interruptions I've already talked about, but if your Backrow isn't all things that are good at stopping Synchro summons, then you should at least stop them from going into a level 8 Synchro, or you should at least have a way to negate Kitedrake. A lot of the tips I've given here might sound similar to things you may have already seen in gameplay, and that's because these are all things that work. These tips also translate to other decks with the same or similar weaknesses. If you guys have any situations you found yourself facing when you're going against Speedroids that this video doesn't cover, let me know the situation and tell me what deck you're playing, and I can give you some more specific tips for how to make things better for you in that matchup. If you guys have any other tips for how to beat Speedroids, be sure to leave them in the comments, but don't say something like playing Dark Hole, because that's absolutely terrible going first, and you want to be able to be good 100% of the time, not 50% of the time. If you guys want to see more videos like this, be sure to slap like now, subscribe if you're new around here, hit that bell to get notified every time we make a new video. But anyway guys, have yourselves a good week, and I've been Undead from Team 6K, signing out.
Hey, why they gotta hate on me? I done got me 250,000 views and they still saying they low key. They ain't wanna come work with the kid, but I'm flexing with Zay on beats. How they ask for a spot at the gym, but they leave all the weight on me. I don't ask them to wait on me. They would ask where they gon' be with a song if they wanted the weatherman. I ain't asking to pay no fees. She was homeless and needed a spot. I ain't ask her to pay no lease. I ain't ask her to say no please. I ain't ask her to make no cheese. Scream fake but it ain't on me. Got clean so it ain't no streets. Why green if it ain't no keeps? Brought cream so it ain't no beef. My team say it ain't no chief. My demon they hang on me. They seemingly ain't no peace. I seen him, he ain't no beast. For